Welcome to the Complander podcast, where we dive into the dynamic world of private capital markets. Whether you're new to private market investing or a seasoned professional, this podcast unpacks the latest trends, insights, and opportunities shaping the industry. Featuring expert guests and deep discussions, Complander is your go-to resource for staying informed and inspired. Hi, Jody.
Hi, Morgan. Long time no see.
I know, it's been 3 days?
I like when we're together all the time.
I know it is different now that we don't live in the same place, but we do find ways to see each other. I think at least once a month in one way or another.
Generally,
Oh,
yeah, we're either on the road. So let's do a recap. We were just in London. We went to London for two reasons. We went to participate in this life science event coming out of Cambridge called BioCentury hosts this, which is a
yep.
really great people. I can't say enough good things about BioCentury and the whole team. And they do this thing called Grand Rounds, which is really bringing the life science community together in the UK and specifically helping companies that are coming and the technology coming out of Cambridge. And so we went
Yep.
to talk about compensation because, as we know, it is different in the US versus the UK. It's different in the UK from the rest of Europe, and it's different for people that have an academic mindset.
Yeah. We participated with BioCentury before in Chicago, and it was interesting to see really the UK life science community is a tight-knit community.
Yeah.
And this was our second year now participating in conferences in Cambridge and the UK in general. And
And
once
we're
you start
starting
to
to know people, which is fun. They're glad
right,
to see us, which is also nice. And I think that really highlights the fact that it is important to go because you
right.
can only do so much over Zoom and phone calls. But when you're there with people, it really is nice.
What do you think about when people say that when you work remote, it hinders your people say that if you work remote, you're less likely to get a promotion or you're less likely to be able to progress in your career because you don't have the interaction with other people. Do you agree with that?
I do, totally. Like, the interaction is really important, and we see this from being in the UK and talking to people that you get to understand body language, and you also get to tell someone's it's like the other day, I walked down the hall and I saw my neighbor come out, and I said to her right away, "What's wrong?" Right? I could
Right,
tell just by the look on her face. So you're missing
right,
that human interaction and element where you really get to sense if someone's having a good day or something might else be going on in their life. And I think those touch points really are the glue for the personal relationships that support the professional ones.
right. Well, I'm going to use that as a segue. I mean, London, I think if there's a lot of different components to what we wanted to discuss today. One of them is really going to focus on Complander, which is a division of J. Thelander Consulting, but we're going to get there. We're going to take you on a little journey with us together. But
You notice the ring, right? We've got Thelander, Complander, and this is Caplander. So there is a method to the madness, which, as being
there
your
is.
mother and having raised you, I think you would agree with. There was always a method to the madness. Despite the madness, there was always a mindset, right?
Yes, that is definitely true. And we've touched on that a couple of times now. Really, where interesting part, so we go to the UK for speaking engagements, yes, but really the reason why we go is that because we have international compensation data. Period. And we were approached by the BIA organization in the UK to have a private company data set only for the UK, separate of Europe, separate from the US. And there's so much talent that moves back and forth between Cambridge, UK, and then Cambridge and Boston.
Yeah, I know we've mentioned this before, but it really is true, and it comes up every single time we're there. And then we also were in London proper, where we had met some clients and we saw some lab space to really see what's going on.
Jody and I had a whole fun experience going to a
Kidding.
lab space.
Oh,
Yes.
yeah.
So we arrived on Sunday for meetings on Monday because you can't, especially flying international. We've talked about this previously, is that you, first of all, you never check a bag. And second of all, you have to give yourself time in case something goes
If
wrong.
something goes wrong,
So,
right?
right. So we came in Sunday afternoon, Monday morning, Monday meetings. We're going to down
Now,
towards,
let's be clear that one of Morgan's jobs, in addition to being COO and handling all the data, is that you are supposed to keep me on track because you're my handler. I'm not good at the details. Actually, so much so that last year in London at the Jeffries conference, you were not able to be there, and we actually hired someone else to be my handler to make
Correct.
sure that I got from point A to point B because the details elude me.
No, Jody and I have been in Ubers where she has put in the destination, and we are going to an entirely different
In the
area
wrong
than when
direction,
we're
different
supposed to.
state.
Yes.
Right, in
So
several times, right, so
right. So we've built in these layers of infrastructure, but I had come off a trip where I was not the handler. I was the one being handled. And so clicking into that mode. But we're in a black cab, which London, you have a separate lane for the
so
buses
nice.
and the
You
black.
think it's so nice, you
Right.
get in and there's taxi lanes and all of that, but lo
No.
and behold, we are in this taxi and it
This
is
is
going so
after.
flippin' slow.
We get in the taxi, and first of all, the taxi's going in the wrong direction. So we go around the block entirely, which then we're looking at the meter and it's 10 pounds, just that. And Jody looks over at
Right, with
me
10
and
pounds
she
in
goes,
US dollars is like $15 practically.
right. She goes, I just paid $15 to go around the block. And in my mind, I'm thinking to myself, our alarm bell's going off, right? I'm thinking, this is not going to go well. And we left ourselves time to go, but then all of a sudden, we're not moving. We are stuck in traffic and we're
Now we're
watching the
30
meter
minutes out,
go.
we left ourselves 45 minutes to get there because the day before you told me it would take about 25 minutes to get there, so we had already now we've used up our buffer time.
Correct. Buffer time is gone. And we're in the cab, and Jody's looking at me and tapping her foot, and she's like, "I don't like this." And she's telling me, she goes, "I'm getting very upset."
All the while
Flip.
that the taxi driver, they have these in the black cabs, they have a barrier between you and them, but they have a microphone. So he keeps looking
They
in the
can hear
rear view
you.
mirror. Yeah, he can hear me
Right,
and he can feel this like we are
right.
escalating at this point.
Right. And then at this point, I'm getting onto Google Maps and I'm trying to see what other ways we could go because not every tube station has the same route, has the same train. So I'm looking to see where we're going. And I said, and then we start getting into in the sense of saying, well, what do you want to do? And Jody's like, well, I don't want to be late. And I go, it's too late. We're going to be late. So email the
Keep that.
client. We keep going. And then we get out of then she goes, I'm not getting out of the car. And then 20 seconds go by. She goes, that's it. I'm getting out of the car.
Well, I
Get out
saw
of
a
the
tube
car.
station, I was like, "We're getting out of the car," and then you
Yeah.
inform me that is in fact the wrong tube station, and I really wanna let you have it, but I think to myself, "You know what? At this point, there's no reason to burn the fire, win the battle, lose the war, so I'm just gonna keep going 'cause now I'm upset that we're late, which I really feel like is so disrespectful and bad. We
Yep.
It's like a terrible reputation thing, I hate it. So in the
Yep.
meantime, Morgan tells me that it's not that tube station, that we have to basically run to the other tube station, so now we're walking as fast as 2 people can. I am wearing sneakers
Booties
and
and
Morgan
sneakers.
yeah, and Morgan's
Yep.
in a pair of low-heeled shoes, but nonetheless shoes, and so I'm half sort of watching out of the side eye, and I can see Morgan is trying to move as fast as she can, but you can see that she's a little gimping as well, that her foot is maybe or her feet are starting to hurt, so I'm thinking, okay, this might be just a little bit of revenge sort of karma. So now we get into the tube station, and from the wars that you go down like not just one level, you go
You
down
go
like 10
to the
levels,
depths of the earth. You're on not 1 elevator, and you're not on, like, a little
like
elevator for
5
6 steps. Right, you're, like, on
escalator.
3 right, escalators. You're on all the different escalators. You're going way, 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 way down,
Right.
and we're scanning, and we're looking. We're like, "Do we need the passes?" We're
Running
scanning the
around and we
phone.
don't know what we have to buy, but it turns out it's all on Apple Pay. So in the meantime, now we've run around, we get to the tube on the right line, we get to where we're going, and now we have to get out of the tube station and go to the offices. And now I can see, and I'm trying really just to keep it together. Morgan is really, I'm in my sneakers, and Morgan is really, I can see by her walk,
We've
which is
slowed
now
down.
sort of
Yes.
sideways.
At
Morgan is
this point,
slowing
we have
down.
slowed down.
Yeah, Morgan doesn't feel good. I can see that her feet are in distress.
I was not going to tell Jody. Over my dead body, was I gonna tell Jody that I had blisters on my feet? I did not.
So I
And
thought
so
to
we get in.
myself, okay, karma came back around really quick because that's because you're such a good person. So you're very close to the line. And I don't have to say anything because the universe did it for me. So Morgan has
Nope.
now been punished.
And I kid you not when I tell you, so then we get into the client's office and everything was fine. We had the lab tour, they had room, to kind of let us be a little bit late. He was understanding. He goes, "You never take a black cab," and we did not take another cab except for I think at night leaving a play one night. But otherwise we stuck to the buses and we stuck to the tube. But we
Right.
learned the
You
lesson
have
that way.
to.
And the real The real kicker must have been for the people who were in the Amazon market next door when we were leaving,
So
and
we come
Jody
out
was
of the
walking up
meeting, now I've switched hats from being Morgan's boss to thinking, "Okay, well, now we've leveled the playing
we're
field,"
in mom
to then
mode,
being Morgan's mother, where I feel terrible that her feet hurt. Now Morgan's foot is a half size bigger than mine, so I decide that the best thing to do is for us to switch. For we go in to buy Band-Aids, and then I think in which case I also, while Morgan is putting, and I see her feet and it's really bad, her
it's wrong.
ankles.
I'm sitting on, like, the windowsill behind the huge energy drinks, and I take the shoes off, and I start to put the Band-Aids on, and I look at Jody, who's
Bad.
got the crazy brown curly hair, she's standing there in this beautiful Burberry jacket, and she's ripping open a bag of, like, Haribo gummies,
They're
and
so good there.
she's like, "How is your foot?" Eats
Yeah,
the
bad.
sour gummy, right.
So then we get out with all of your Band-Aids on, and I offer to switch shoes. So I gave Morgan my sneakers, and I take the inner soles out of my shoes and put them into Morgan's shoes so I can clop along, and we successfully switch shoes and mitigate a problem. Now talk about being agile, right?
Right?
That's the
Is
entrepreneur
that
special right there. Okay, so back to the
when
business at
people
hand.
that will answer the question for what people are like, "Well, what's it like to work with your mother and travel?" You go, "Well, you hit all targets at all times
Yeah, very
throughout a trip."
quickly.
Right, it's different. So and the line there's definitely certain points where the line between mom and boss, it can get blurry, but then
It
there's
really
also
gross, yeah.
where you do straight up sometimes just switch lanes.
Yeah.
Um, but okay, so back to this. So we kind of covered the London recap. We shared with you one of our little funny stories. But one of the things that's really come out a lot that we want to talk about is how there's a whole new wave of companies coming out who are raising really not, for all intents and purposes, not a lot
Not
of
a lot of
capital.
money.
Right. They're not a lot of money and they're operating really lean, really mean, and the hiring strategies have evolved where they have shifted the focus from having a lot of people and building out a really big team and paying high salaries. And they're switching that mindset to say, well, I'm going to hire less people. I'm going to hire somebody who might be willing to put the work life balance aside and focus on the company and really jump in and make this a kind of a part of their life versus being siloed in a lane.
Yeah. So with that, this is sort of where we're talking about Complander.
But it's really private markets have changed and they've really changed a lot over the last 5 years because there was such a high in 2021. It was free for all in our year
There's
over year comp.
also, as we've recapped, there's been highs, and this is not the first high. There was go-go.com days back in the late '90s. So there have been highs and there's been lows, but there has been a lack of information and transparency, which has now been, very become a buzzword around pay. And the private company stuff is not your public company stuff, and it's not the stuff you can find on some of these other job boards that are really job boards. And that's where Complander has become a well honed tool for people that are junior, somewhere in the entry level up to a manager level, to be able to understand the mix of cash and equity, or if they're going to a venture firm, cash and carry. And I think to your point, it's even more important than ever to get it right in the beginning as an individual, because these young companies are not raising a lot of capital and they may have some kind of acquisition or exit earlier on, and you want to make sure that for all of the trade-offs that you're having for your work-life balance or lack of, that you're not giving up too much in terms of either the cash or the equity, that's in balance as well.
Well, it's all of that and also really where individuals coming out of college or who are working at a public corporation and are earlier in their careers understand what a startup is or what a private company is. It's a whole career track now. And it's
Yeah.
very attractive because there's a lot of flexibility that can come with it. It's very it's kind of it's a sexy business in the sense where it's totally innovative, it's fast paced, there's a lot going on, and there's a lot of opportunity. And part of that opportunity is in the way of the compensation because there are special ingredients, as Jody mentioned, the carried interest, the equity components that can really turn into wealth creation depending on how early you get into a company. But what's changed so much over the last couple of years has really been that companies are staying private for longer and the public market, the IPO market has been quiet. It's opening up
Yes,
a
but
little bit more.
that's true, but there are still companies that are getting in and getting out faster who have not built big staffs, who have, people who are really flexible and can do
Right,
multiple things. So I think that's where you
right,
don't know which way it's gonna go, and that's why you
right.
can't have a trade-off between cash and equity. You gotta make sure let's just talk about a private company for a minute, between cash and equity, that
Let's
it's
give an
important to
example.
know.
Right, let's give an example. So, for example, there say I am a marketing associate, entry level, graduated college, University of Wisconsin, go Badgers, and I'm looking at a job in Chicago, and it's for a private tech company, and I wanna see they're telling me that I get equity, and they're giving me a number, right? But the number is a number of
Number of
shares.
shares.
Correct. Complander, you'd go to complander.com and you would select the job title, you'd fill out some high level
Whether your
information about.
offer whether you've had an offer, if you don't have a current compensation, you can still fill in your offer data.
Right, exactly. And what it does is Complander is your one-stop shop for all things compensation for private capital market. And it will tell you as a marketing associate what you get for base salary, bonus, total cash, target bonus, and then instead of giving you the equity piece as a number of shares, it's a percentage. And the difference really is there's a whole guide telling you with
Yeah, exactly, to
resources.
break it down for you because it's really important. It's really important that you get this right, and it's really important that you understand not only what the package is, but how it compares to market, and that will help you on your way because if you make a mistake in this compensation with the initial package, it's gonna be really hard to correct it, likely you're gonna have to go someplace else.
And that's really the wraparound point with this is that because the market is different and the market has evolved, that equity component could amount to nothing. Which
Right.
is right, which is really why it's so important to make sure that you get the cash too,
Yeah.
or that at least you are looking at real-time market data to make an educated decision so that you are at least aware of what you are taking one instead of the other, or where you are sitting, what market data is, and then you can decide what you want to do from there.
Especially if you're really smart and good, because we've heard this now twice from CEOs. We heard this in London from a CEO that we had lunch with, and we heard this when we did a podcast recording yesterday from a CEO saying that they're not making a lot of hires, but the hires they're making are really important hires. And then we
Yeah,
heard from the investor that we had lunch with, sort of slash CEO, is she said that they getting a lot of equity or getting a little bit of equity in multiple companies may amount to nothing. Like you cannot trade that off for the cash. So
right.
knowing this is really important. That's where Complander is a great tool. And to your credit, Morgan, we came up with Complander because the main business, Thelander, only is available to companies or to investment firms or law firms or other people who purchase
Right.
access to the data. And it seems sort of unfair that we weren't vetting this data for individuals who just wanted to understand one job or a couple of jobs.
Yeah. I mean, there's a gap in the marketplace, right? I mean, that's really what it is. And the reality is whether not everybody's motivated by a paycheck. Some people, I mean, we've heard this a lot with life science companies. They're really focused on patient outcomes and patient care, which is
Yeah.
very
There are a lot
honorable.
of tech
And
companies and fintech companies that are not they are motivated by what the company or the technology or the AI accomplishes, but it's less sort of individual or business to business, and it's more consumer driven, but it has that less sort of goodwill and more definitely about getting to a finish line.
for sure. I mean, I'm not the right one to ask because I'm very motivated by money. So I would be the person looking up I'd be looking
You're
at my job.
motivated by both. You're motivated
Yes.
by both. We're all motivated
Yeah.
by both. I think that's I'm motivated by money, but more and more so I am more of a life science person in effect in that I care about I can't tell you how many calls I have where people say, "Oh, that they had spoken with you or with me and it was so helpful."
Right.
And we didn't get paid for it, but we know that it's for the
No.
greater good. And that's
Yes.
where I mean, how many years did I run surveys where nobody bought data on the investment firm side and it was sort a little felt like a little bit of a loss, but I knew that it was gonna
Right.
become a career track. It had to. It's like Complander. At some point, people have to wanna know.
Yeah. I just think in terms of anything with jobs that you can use a job site to find something, but also the reality is that there's so many you have to make sure that you benchmark compensation.
Well,
It's such
job
a
sites in
basic
general are crap for comp data. They're great for as to be a
they
job
pull
site.
They in any case, this is a public service announcement. How job sites get their ranges is that they pull those ranges from recruiters and they
Right.
pull
It's
those
all
ranges from
self-serving. It's not pure in any way, shape, or form.
right. It's like if you go to a restaurant and you're like and you ask the server, you're like, "Is that good?" The server's gonna say yes. They're working
Right,
at the restaurant. They're
right.
not gonna tell you, "No, that sucks, don't eat
Yeah,
it. We
go
saw
down the
that's
street, something's
right,
better
that's
down
3
there.
day right, that's 3-day-old lettuce. You don't want that." They're gonna be like, "It's so good. It's
Look,
delicious.
Morgan,
You should get
you've
to
learned
it."
to have your analogies just like your mother. Good for
I am
you.
I have had the analogies. Well, Jody, it's always nice to speak with you. Do we have anything
Yes,
else we need to cover?
Complander, and more Complander. Get data. If you're mid-level or junior and someone makes you an offer, make sure that you are armed with market data, not recruiting data or anything else, or it's really important. Go get
Yep.
that money and make sure that your job you don't have to worry about the money if you get that right in the beginning.
Well, it's also knowing your worth. That's the other piece of it, of knowing in the sense of, well, okay, well, what is my value in the marketplace? What is
Right.
my job worth?
No one's
It's
giving
not
you
an
an offer assuming you're not gonna negotiate. There's always room to negotiate. That's what it says
you
on
have to.
Complander. It pays to know, and I believe that is absolutely true.
Yes,
All right,
absolutely well said.
Morgan. Next time I wear your sneakers and make sure that you, look at the maps and figure out how to get us there.
Yeah.